Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex. Lord, I'm going to pat myself on the back to start this show. I'm the only person in America that had Vanderbilt as a super dog, as a live dog against Alabama. They end up coming out victorious. Now, did I think they were necessarily going to win? I thought it would be a competitive game. Shocked that they actually lost. I think like most of America. I mean, easily the biggest win in program history for Vanderbilt. But let's start there. It was a crazy week of college football. We talked about it being a sleepy week. 5 teams upset in the top 11, some not necessarily upset, some bigger than others. But Alabama, we just gave Kalen DeBoer all this credit for the way that he came out and was prepared against Georgia. But what did Nick Saban do? Good coaches can do that. But what made Nick Saban different? There was never a foot off the pedal in a game like this against Vanderbilt. Excuse me. And this is a Vanderbilt team that is not like typical Vanderbilt teams. They're able to score and stuff. But we saw huge issues in the second half of that Georgia game with Alabama's defense. And they were just made like, oh, these aren't just issues. These are like problems that are going to prevent them from winning a national championship. That's what I took away from it. I didn't just take away from it, yes, Kalen DeBoer is bad. Not bad. But yes, there has to be questions about him. This Alabama defense, as far as this year is concerned, they can't win a national championship with that defense.
No, and Vanderbilt's offense is good. Pavio is a great quarterback. For Vanderbilt's offense, it might be the best offense in program history, and this is undoubtedly their biggest win in program history. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But it's Vanderbilt's offense couldn't hold a candle to Texas's offense. They couldn't hold to LSU's offense, Ole Miss's offense. Like if Bama had struggles with, and we know Georgia's offense has had some struggles throughout the whole season. If Alabama thinks that they're going to be able to stop Texas in an SEC championship game or a potential playoff game, LSU at the end of the year, like they've got a lot of stuff coming. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier is going to rip that secondary apart, rip them apart if he has time. I mean, this Alabama team, that's the kind of stuff where Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, all the greatest coaches, Bill Belichick, they're never satisfied even in a win. Biggest win in Kalen DeBoer's coaching career, Bama over Georgia 2 weeks ago. Nick Saban comes away in that press conference not happy, going, did you see what we did in the second half? Did you see our secondary? Did you see this? They're focused on perfecting stuff, improving things. And that's not to say Kalen DeBoer didn't do that this week leading up to Vanderbilt. But I have questions about, the intensity or maybe I can't think of the word where like the importance of focusing on fixing the issues instead of maybe patting yourself on the back or trying to strengthen a strength. You're trying to fix weaknesses. I don't know what goes on inside Tuscaloosa, but it feels like he did absolutely nothing after watching a Georgia offense, which has had its issues all year long, in no way, shape, or form is a powerhouse of a unit, struggle against that Georgia offense and did nothing against a good Vandy team. And if they didn't think anything of Vandy, that's again sits on their feet. I can't believe they lost that game. I think me and everyone in America, I know I saw it on sports books, that everybody and their mothers at pretty much every point in that game thought Bama was going to come back and win. Similar to maybe the UCF game where it was like, yeah, they're struggling, playing with their food a little bit, but it was never in doubt. I felt like that a lot of the time until clock kept ticking down and Vanderbilt kept getting first downs. That kid Pavia is unbelievable. Maybe the greatest player. I don't know a lot of Vanderbilt history. Probably the greatest player in Vanderbilt history right now.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, Alabama got out physical by Vanderbilt, and that's just something that's unacceptable, right? And especially on the defensive side of the ball. And then the way Malachi Moore was out there kicking and screaming like a little kid, a guy that's been a 2-year captain. I mean, that never happens under Nick Saban. So there's a lot of things that you can point at that where you're like, hey, DeBoer, like, wake up, like, it's go time. Like, the SEC, I know you got a big one over Georgia, but the SEC doesn't stop. And this gauntlet only gets harder, yes. Which brings me to the question, right, Alex? Like, is Alabama a playoff team? And I know that's crazy to say just a couple of weeks after they beat the University of Georgia, not even a couple of weeks, not even 10 days after beating the University of Georgia. But listen to this. They don't have the toughest schedule remaining. It's not like Georgia's what they have remaining, but they go at Tennessee. Yep. They go at LSU. You just mentioned it. We just talked about it. The defense is a huge. I mean,
and those two offenses
are way better than what they've
way seen. Better. I mean, the two best offenses they will have seen.
And listen, Tennessee's defense is nothing to spit at. LSU's might, But it's nothing to stick your nose at. And Tennessee's defense, like they're going to be able to get a few stops against Jalen Milroe. Yeah. I don't know if LSU will, so maybe you can win a shootout there. But seriously, I mean, is there any other way that they win those football games without scoring 40 or 50 points? And that's not going to be easy to do, especially on the road, right? Especially when they know the biggest threat is Jalen Milroe's feet. If you can take that away and make him throw the ball, yes, he can have success. Can they score 40 or 50 points? That's going to be difficult to do. And as a 9-3 team with a good win over Georgia, ending the season pretty pathetic and a loss to Vandy on their resume. Listen, everybody in the NCAA seems to suck this year outside of Texas. We don't really know. But everyone seems to be losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to because there's no dominant teams like we talked about before the season. I still don't know if a 9-3 team with those 3 losses to end the year goes out there and gets in the playoff. And I think those are games that you circle. And frankly, we just watched them all lose to Vanderbilt. They can lose to anybody. Like this defense makes them susceptible to lose to absolutely anybody on their schedule. And I think if you're an Alabama fan, you have to be worried moving forward.
I think obviously everything is wide open. I think the questions remain about Ohio State and Texas. Those are the 2 teams at the top that everybody thinks are national champions, but we are national championship contenders. But again, like you said, they haven't played anybody. They haven't played anybody to prove whether they are or not.
Don't talk to me about
Michigan. That's a joke.
We'll talk about them later.
But don't talk about Michigan. I think sooner or later we're going to learn about those 2 programs. I mean, Texas has looked unbeatable. Pretty much, especially when Quinn Ewers is in there. But as far as Ohio State, week in and week out has played with its food. A 35-7 win over Iowa doesn't exactly move me. That Ohio State defense is very, very good. Walker Howard might be living off of those generational receivers that Ohio State always seemingly has. But I think more than anything, Bama is a college football playoff team purely because everybody else sucks. And I was texting people, you said it too, that like we're LSU fans. LSU is back. LSU is back in the picture only because everybody sucks. It's not because LSU is this world beater. LSU sucks. You know, everybody else is just not a good football team. It's clear as day. Every single, other than the 2 I just mentioned, Texas and Ohio State, because we haven't seen it yet, are very flawed teams. Every single one of them. Like Georgia's a very flawed team. Alabama's a flawed team. LSU, Ole Miss, Penn State, Michigan, USC, the Oregon. The list goes on and on and on.
These aren't typical like flaws like we talk about. Like sometimes we nitpick.
These are like Achilles heels.
Yeah, sometimes we nitpick at Alabama or Georgia. We're like, oh, do we really love their offense? Can Stetson Bennett rise to the occasion? Stuff like that, like little things. We're talking about a Georgia team that has huge flaws on offense. We're talking about Alabama, a team huge flaws on the defensive side of the ball. We don't know about Texas's flaws. We haven't seen them yet. But every single team. I mean, Miami, one of the worst defenses you can possibly see. I mean, these are flawed teams. Missouri, absolute joke.
Yeah,
I mean, we'll get into the rest of the slate because we talked a lot about this Alabama game. But everybody has major flaws. I mean, I am shocked by it. I'm excited by it. I think it makes everything fun. Like, I hope we go out, and we'll talk about this game later in the week, but Texas plays Oklahoma, and I hope it's a shootout or a great game where you're like, oh, Texas has flaws too. Because then we know everybody has flaws. Yeah. Absolutely everybody has flaws. And if you're a fan of a team like LSU or Georgia who just lost to Alabama or Alabama who just lost to Vandy, you still feel like you got a shot because the 12-team playoff is here and everybody has a lot of flaws. And that tournament all of a sudden is getting more exciting by the day, right?
Right. And you know, we talked about last week kind of being a sleepy week in terms of it wasn't great games. I think that was the perfect little microcosm of what the future of the SEC and the future of the sport really entails with these mega conferences is that, and the NIL, I certainly think that plays a part, is that every single week you better be on your P's and Q's or you're going to lose a game. And it can happen to literally anybody, obviously. Number one, Alabama.
Yeah. One last thing. Are you surprised how quickly it happened? Because yes, I think everyone thought the transfer portal, NIL, 12-team playoff, you were going to get a more even playing field. But we watch this sport week after week after week, and it's becoming more and more clear just how even things are, not just from 1 to 10
so
to 12,
I thought
1 to 25 to 30.
That's what I'm most surprised about. It's not the parity from at the top, because I thought that was already there. Like at the beginning of the season, I thought it was already there. But as this season, and I think it's only going to continue, like it's only going to become more clear, is the parity is it's a much wider or a much shorter gap from 1 to 25 than it has been ever in the history of college football.
And I think the way like teams like Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina have played earlier in their seasons, giving teams runs for their money, making these big upsets and then losing to each other. And then like Georgia State beats Vandy, you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And frankly, I'm here for it.
That's
I love
awesome.
it. We were all excited about it. I'm glad it's here a lot faster than we expected, but we'll get to the rest of the college football games after the break.